something about me. I love board games. I am a former American football player. Now I practice boxing, and I code JavaScript for 15 years. So as you can see, a clear pattern of me getting beaten by something bigger and crazier than me, and me trying to fight back. These are my contacts. If you don't like the bird site, please use Mastodon. And today I will talk you an history about survival. Today we talk about developer experience. I will talk you about developer survivalism. How me and my team escape from a bad situation that create ourselves. Quick disclaimer about multi-tenancy. This is the classical definition of multi-tenancy. This is another definition of multi-tenancy. This a definition that fits for backend. Okay, in frontend is quite difficult to provide a real multi-tenant software. So out of the table, I have a backend multi-tenancy service. I provide multiple sites, but I call tenants. Okay, so this is multi-tenancy for us in frontend. Multi-tenancy is multiple sites. Okay. Let me tell you an oral story. What a wonderful architecture. One backend, one frontend, everything works nice and smooth. Then one day we need a quick rebrand of the product of the frontend. The backend works well. We need it quickly because there's a fair tomorrow. We need to present to the market a rebranded product. Oh, sorry. So let's fork it. We need it quickly. We have two front ends, two tenants. You can see the air quotes. And then move on. We need to deliver an on-premise version of the architecture because a client wants it. So let's deliver the on-premise version of the same first architecture. Then we really need a new feature, add it, or then we are in a rush. We need a copy of the architecture, and you can see something here becoming quite difficult. But I'm not joking. You don't say no to your boss. Sometimes, I hope he's watching the conference right now. I really hope that. Sometimes you need to compromise. You need to deliver some bad code. You need to do some bad choices for your company. You take the bullet, okay? So let's move on. Now we need to add the feature, but we have too many forks, too many front ends. We lose control of our code and our deploys. Move on. Try to fix it. Make a mess. How to escape from that? I really am a bad programmer. Maybe I should move back to Angular. I don't know. So this is our problem to solve. We was in a really bad place. So this is a possible solution. A possible solution. This is the solution that works for us, for my team. This is a set of tips and tricks that we apply to deploy, to solve that problem. I hope something worked for you. It's not a universal pattern, it's not a universal way to do that, to solve that problem. So, what we need to do, single code base. Get rid of all the forks, get rid of all the branches. That solved 90% of our problems. But you need to serve multiple tenants. because our backends is based on multiple tenants. And then if you don't want to make some mess in your code, you really need to isolate your business logic, your core logic, from the tenant handling logic because of maintainability, because of clean code. Then you really need to deploy that in an efficient way. So you need to handle multiple pipelines for every tenant, for every site. So how to escape that situation? We really need a hero to escape that hell, and our hero is the tenant service, the solution that we applied. So our hero split the problems to solve that in two principal problems, and then it is split back to three. API calls, we need to provide tenant headers to the API calls, and handling the assets, because every tenant, every site has its own assets, and this is the main pain, okay? Locales, I-18 and translations that may be a part of your code base. Styles, because maybe every tenant has his own personalization, his own colors, his own styles, and also images. I'm not talking about huge photos, you need to use a CMS for that, but the small logo on the top of your application is very probably in your code base. So you need to handle that. Moving on, deep dive. API calls. So who is the main responsible from knowing which tenant we are using is the classical environment. We have multiple environment from multiple tenants. And then the tenant service will read the environment and provided for the rest of the application. It seems simple. Because we really like Pinia, we add the tenant using the tenant code in your application state. So the state is okay. Nobody needs to know about how the multi-tenancy is implemented. That became part of our application state. You can see something strange here. We are in a Vue3 TypeScript 5 Pinia application. You can do that. This is the way Pinia provides, lets you use environment variables. But there is a trick to use the old-fashioned process.env.variable. Why I use that? First of all, for retrocompatibility. Okay, I'm moving from I use the application from Vue 2 to Vue 3. With this trick, I can literally lift and shift services that are not Vue files. I really need to don't touch that. So how we do that? Move to our Vite config. We add the load env from Vite. I will provide you the code for that, so don't worry. Create the environment variables with load env, and then map the new Vite import style environment to the old fashion. Okay. You can also add variables to your environments. This is an example. You want to read something for your statical files from your package JSON, add to your environments and use it in a clean way. Then add it to your config, and you will be able to use old-fashioned process.env. Name of the variable. In this case, tenant code. Then how we use that? If you use Axios, this will work for other libraries than Axios. I solved that with Axios. you add to your Axios interceptor a really small fragment of code that read for your tenant service and decorate every API call that makes Axios with your tenant code. I think you use something like that for your authorization header. I think if you have authorization header, a good place to do that is an Axios is an interceptor, Axios in my case. So you don't need to worry about tenants in other part of the code. The rest of the code does not know about tenants. Okay, you really need to don't know about that. So an example, very simple application made with Vue Start. You can download that. I will provide the link for that. This is our tenant. Read from the tenant code, the tenant service, tenant code. Let's make a simple API call, a dummy one. Get the data. Take a look in how I made the call. This is a Pinia action. Super simple. I like to isolate services from my state. So I invoke a get user service. A get user service is a very small function that makes the API call. In this case, to a dummy service. In my case, to my backend, to my multi-tenant backend that knows how to handle my tenants. But as you can see here, nobody knows nothing about tenants. Your business logic is totally clean. Take a look to our HTTP headers, and there is our tenant code. You make the API call, you don't worry about the tenants. If you are working in a big team, the guys that work on some services really doesn't need to know about tenants. So APIs are covered. They are quite simple. Moving to assets, and this is where things become a little bit messy, because you need to add to your code base something. You really need to add files to your code base. So you need to make choices. This is my choice. This is the choice of my team. First of all, general assets. For everything, we choose fallback logic. We have shared asset, images, styles, translation, and then we have specific assets for every tenant. In this case, the two tenants are Vue, the one we saw earlier, and Mago, my company. As you can see, we have a duplicated folder structure for every tenant. This could be quite messy, so you really need to put attention in how much file you are duplicating and keep the duplication minimal, okay? Because if you have 10 tenants, 20 tenants, it can become very messy very quick. Moving on to the first critical asset, translation, I18 and translation. This is ended by JSON file hosted in our code base. You can also do that by fetching your translation, your JSON translation from CMS, but we already managed to fetch something from an API call. So let's cover that. We have shared locales with the majority of the translation, with the majority of the strings. I really don't need to provide dedicated string for every tenant for the click here string of the OK string. So the heavy lifting is made by the shared translation. which are handled in a classical A18N import way. Then we have dedicated translation with a fallback. Oh, where I am? With a fallback mechanism. Take a look. The Mago tenant does not have the Spanish translation. We will see that later, okay? Because it's possible that if you are a many tenant, you can have everything right now in a small amount of time. So, how to load that? Back to our hero, tenant service. We had a simple function that load the JSON files. The only relevant thing here is this should be the only function aware of the folder structure. We have a complex folder structure. We have a folder structure that can lead to errors. So you want to have a single responsibility for that path. Nobody outside this function should know that path. So if something broke on that path, this is the function you fix. Really simple, this one. Try to load the translation, handle the error. Move on. This is a translation service, okay, used for I18N handling. Sorry, this using a tenant service. Take a look to the get from file system function. This is the function that use the tenant service and fetch the translation and return that. I add the comment. This is where you can fetch your translation for a CMS from a CMS if you have an higher, a different structure for your translation, different solution for your translation. Back to our main files. Use an internationalization in a classical way. Add the translation service, regular I18N import. This is the only small fragment of code that apply tenant translation. And with a fallback strategy, you have first load the fallback translation, that you merge your tenant dedicated translation. Back to our example. This is the Vue tenant in Italian and in English. Let's move to the other tenant, the Mago tenant. The Mago tenant, remember, have no Spanish translation. So take a look to the tenant translation. It will use a fallback translation. So translation are covered. Move to styles. There are similar files. I think there's a similar solution. Style sheets apply in cascade by their nature, so it's easy to write a common CSS file, SAS file in my case, and then write a dedicated file for the tenant. So move back to our tenant service and add a function that load the CSS file, very similar to the previous one, and then apply it to your application. So easy. Let's zoom to the functions. Does not work because because Vite is quite strange. I think Vite handling CSS file in different way instead of JSON files. So if you do that, your local running application will work. The green title is provided by the tenant dedicated style. But when you build that, you lose that style. Take a look to the error. You can, the application can find the dedicated CSS SAS file. So how I fix that? This is the built version. There are no tenant dedicated styles, and Vite can find that. How I solved that? I read Vite documentation. Vite supports globe import. So with this simple modification to your get style asset, you declare with globe the possible path for your SCSS files, then you import that in that way, and it is way it works. Really, I don't know why. I learning that by trial and error. So styles are covered. Now getting to images, which are the trickiest one. As I said early, you may have small images in your code base. Hopefully not big images. So in the shared part, you can see the flags for changing language you see early in the small file. But you have a dedicated SVG file for the logo, the Vue logo and the Mago logo. And this is hosted in the tenant dedicated folder. Back to our tenant service, add an asset loading function. This is the first function you found on Google when you type load dynamic asset with Vue3. It used the get tenant function. You also can use project.env variables, and it works. It provides the asset URL to your Vue components. Simple example of a Vue component: logo URL tenant service dot get emg asset, and use the logo URL. This is working? Yes, it works, but there's a little turnaround. If you take a look to your bundle, to your builded version, to your dist folder, you can see duplicated logo, 2 logo files. Why? The 2 logos are both built in your final dist, and you don't want that, because this is 1 logo for 2 tenants. But if we have 10 images for 20 tenants, it can become a really messy. It can it will be grow in size your builded version. So you can apply strategy to delete the not used image asset, but take another look, a deeper look. This is small, but Vite refers all the logos in the final builded JavaScript. So if you delete the not used logo, the other tenant's logo, you will get an error. Vite include everything. I don't know why, again. This is another trial and error. Also, maybe you don't want to your tenants, to your client, to know about each other. You don't want to your client to right-click on your code and say, oh, we are 10 of us, we are 20 of us. So, how I solved that? How we solved that? Little bit optimization obtained by this wonderful plugin added to your Vite config. Is a plugin for SVG. It works well if you had PNGs or binary images. You can include in a SVG in a file. So I stick to that. Is a plugin for Vite. Import that, declare that, and let's transform our get img asset URL to another function that load the SVG URL with our plugin. Take a look here. This is the SVG loader plugin that provides you different ways to load the SVG asset by URL, by binary, by string. Very great plugin. So moving on, notice something. This is an asynchronous function. So, okay, this is an asynchronous function. So you really need to mess up your component with on before mount load something, because you can directly load the logo URL. If you don't want to add more libraries to your code, stick to that. I really like, okay, this is the import. I really like this wonderful library, is Vue use. Maybe you use that for other purposes, that provides you the computed async. Is wonderful. So you can declare the on the fly logo URL and use that. And final step, add to your vite config.typescript this fragment of code that will clean all the files that are not dedicated to the current tenant. Okay, this will remove all the files that are not distributed in this version of the site. So take a look of the builded JavaScript, and is small, but there are references to only one tenant, to only one logo, so only to Vue version of that. Deeper dive of on our dist folder, and you can see nice and clean. Only one translation, only one logo, only one style sheet. Super clean. Last but not least, you want to handle your favicon on the top of your maybe a lot of people don't concern about favicon. Certain people have a crisis about that. Is a tricky asset, because if you want to handle properly your favicon, you need 20 files. You know, you need the .ico files, you need the kind of 10 files for Apple, 10 files for Microsoft, different sizes, and it's quite messy. There is a wonderful plugin with favicon inject that lets you generate all your favicons basic on a single SVG file, in this case your logo. So with a single file you can generate at build time, so that if is there because only at build time on the final version of our application we have the 20 files for the favicon. Add the SVG loader, and now we have nice and clean two different favicon for two different tenants. So, thanks. It was quick, I think. As I said, it's how I solve a problem. It is not a design pattern. It is not a universal good practice. It's how I solve a real production problem. How me and my team escape from that hell. So, thank you. These are my contacts. You can download the application that I use from there. Is a Vue starter with everything ready, so you can use it for application scaffolding. It does also Sentry, log handling. So, thank you.
I will definitely be checking that out. That looks really, really
Oh,
interesting.
you will find a lot of errors.
Well, I think that's probably true in my code as well. So, we can shake hands there. Anyone have any questions about multi-tenancy and actually multi-everything?
Yeah, this is literally multi-everything.
Hey, thanks for amazing presentation. That was really cool to follow, and I think a nice solution to the problem
Thank you.
that you had. So I was wondering how you test the multi-tenant environment, or do you at all?
I test it only with functional testing. So I run Cypress against the final builded version after publishing that.
But like, do you have the same test suite against multiple tenants, or?
Oh, yes, this is a really small test. I do the heavy lifting with unit testing and other functional testing. I have a simple test that checks the color of the header or something like that.
Got it. Cool, thank you.
Thanks. So thank you for the talk, and also thank you because I just did something like this in Vue 2, and now I know how to do it.
I did that in Vue 2, and I need to rewrite that in Vue 3 when Vite came.
Yeah.
And I have to learn everything about Vite and these strange imports.
Okay, so I'm not alone. So a question which, again, slightly out of scope, but that was interesting. So I was interested in, so the next step would probably be if you had different modules or slightly different behaviors, for example, different registration forms and this kind of an app. Do you have any ideas how you would handle that? Would it be like loading files dynamically, micro frontends, or something else entirely? Thank you.
For our application, there are slight minimal differences between tenants in login forms, because some tenants are federated, has federated login, other tenants have not. I manage that by configuration. I don't want in my code something like if tenant equals something, do that, because I think it's bad. So I add some configuration variables to my environment, something like federated login enabled. So you can create a dedicated configuration in your env files and use it I deploy that with Azure. I have a YAML playbook for deploying every tenant, single YAML files that use single environments handled, in my case, by Azure. Single set of variables. So configuration, not code.
Anyone else want to?
It's a very specific argument. So.
Well, I think it's a fascinating one, right? It must be very satisfying. Do you find it satisfying when you?
Yeah. Yes, because I was very suffering before. The feature deployed only on some tenants. It was a real production issues with screaming people. Why I don't have that? I don't know why.
You weren't exaggerating, were you, with the fire? And that's actually real experience.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to ask a question about multi-everything?
No.
No? Well, it's a great talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please do give a round of applause.